Here's an article in the Jerusalem Post, dated November 12th, 2015, and it's by Sam Sokol, Sokol. And one second, it's a lot of pop-ups, so Firefox freezes like Anyway, the ADL, that's the Anti-Defamation League, censures Polish PM or Prime Minister over virulently anti-Semitic ministerial choice. A Polish ministerial nominee landed in hot water this week after it emerged that he had claimed that there was a Jewish conspiracy in a radio interview more than a decade ago. In 2002, Antoni, I can't pronounce this, Macierewicz, whose name was submitted for the position of defense minister on Monday, stated that while there are doubts as to the authenticity of the book, The Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which purported to prove the existence of a Jewish cabal secretly controlling the world, it does contain a kernel of truth. And this is what he said. I read it. It is very interesting. Some say it is authentic. Some say it's not. I am not a specialist. Experience shows there are such groups in Jewish circles, unquote. The article continues. The book was exposed decades ago as a Caesarist forgery and is considered credible by mainstream academics or researchers. Now, I read about this over a decade ago, and what it was basically a stage play that was written. Actually, it was a book. Let me see. Let me find this. What it was. Here, I'm going to explain it to you. One second here. Let me read it. This is from the jewishvirtuallibrary.org. And it says, quote, and I unquote that article from the Jerusalem Post, by the way. I'll quote this from the jewishvirtuallibrary.org. Quote, the direct predecessor of the protocols can be found in the pamphlet Dialogues in Hell between Machiavelli and Montesquieu, I don't know, Montesquieu, published by the non-Jewish French satirist Maurice Joly, Joly in 1864. In his dialogues, which make no mention of the Jews, Joly attacked the political ambitions of the Emperor Napoleon III, using the imagery of a diabolical plot in hell. The dialogues were caught by the French authorities soon after their publication, and Joly was tried and sentenced to prison for his pamphlet. Joly's dialogues, while intended as a political satire, soon fell into the hands of a German anti-Semite named Hermann Goedesch, Goedeschhe, writing under the name as Sir John Ratcliffe. That's Retcliffe. Goedesch was a postal worker and a spy for the Prussian secret police. He had been forced to leave the postal work due to his part in forging evidence in the prosecution against the Democratic leader Benedict Waldeck, that's Waldeck, in 1849. Goedesch adapted Joly's dialogues into a mythical tale of a Jewish conspiracy as part of a series of novels entitled Britz, Biarritz, which appeared in 1868. In a chapter called The Jewish Cemetery in Prague and the Council of Representatives of the 12 Tribes of Israel, He spins the fantasy of a secret centennial rabbinical conference which meets at midnight and whose purpose is to review the past 100 years and to make plans for the next century. Godesh's plagiary of Jolie's dialogue soon found its way to Russia. It was translated into Russian in 1872, and a consolidation of the Council of Representatives under the name Rabbi's Speech appeared in Russian in 1891. These works no doubt furnished the Russian secret police, which was called OKHRANA, with a means with which to strengthen the position of the weak Tsar Nicholas II and discredit the reforms of the liberals who sympathized with the Jews. During the Dreyfus, that's Alfred Dreyfus case of 1893, or I don't know what that means, but anyway, it says case of 1893-1895. Agents of the OKHRANA in Paris redacted the earlier works of Joly and Godesh into a new edition which they called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. The manuscript of the Protocols was brought to Russia in 1895 and was printed privately in 1897. Unquote on that. And one second. I read this years ago, like over 10 years ago. Found it kind of wild. This comes from another site. In the U.S., Henry Ford sponsored the printing of 500,000 copies, and from 1920 to 1922 published a series of anti-Semitic articles titled "The International Jew: The World's Foremost Problem in the Dearborn Independent," a newspaper he owned. In 1921, Ford cited evidence of a Jewish threat. And he says in the article, "The only statement I care to make about the protocols is that they fit in with what is going on. They are 16 years old and they have fitted the world situation up to this time." Unquote on that. It continues to say, Robert A. Rosenbaum wrote that in 1927, bowing to legal and economic pressure, Ford issued a retraction and apology while disclaiming personal responsibility for the anti-Semitic articles and closed the Dearborn Independent in 1927. Henry Ford was also an admirer of Nazi Germany. So to bring it up to date, the protocols continue to be widely available around the world, particularly on the internet, as well as in print in Japan, the Middle East, Asia, and South America. Governments or political leaders in most parts of the world have not referred to the protocols since World War II. The exception to this is the Middle East, where a large number of Arab and Muslim regimes and leaders have endorsed them as authentic, including endorsements from Presidents Gamal Abdel Nasser and Anwar Sadat of Egypt, one of the President Arabs of Iraq, King Faisal of Saudi Arabia, and Colonel al-Qaddafi of Libya. The 1988 Charter of Hamas, a Palestinian Islamic group, states that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion embodies the plan of the Zionists. Recent endorsements in the 21st century have been made by the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Sheikh Sabri, the Education Ministry of Saudi Arabia, member of the Greek Parliament, Cassiodorus, and young Earth creationist and tax evader Kent Hovind, or whatever. In 2010, Italian philosopher and novelist Umberto Eco, ECO, released his novel The Cemetery of Prague, which contains a fictional account of the origin of the protocol's forgery. In 2015, Poland's appointed defense minister has been condemned for entertaining the possibility that the protocols may be real. I'll unquote that article. So, what happened was this guy created this fictional piece, and he was a playwright / novelist, Maurice Joly. And then this other guy, Herman Gudish, or however you pronounce that, from Prussia, he started to manipulate that piece that Maurice Joly had written. And then during that time period, around the turn of the 20th century, you had the Russians, and they around 1900, between like 1900 and 1905, they used that as a propaganda tool in order to go against the Jewish people in Russia. Like both my parents are Jewish, and my grandparents were Jewish, and on my father's side, who came from Russia, he lived in Kiev, and he it was about 1902, 1903, maybe to 1905, around in that period, 1902 to 1905, he came over to America to escape what was going on in Russia. And this is one of the things that drove Russia and non-Jewish Russians against the Jewish people. I mean, they use this as a tool like anything else. I mean, all governments do that if they have some kind of propaganda, whatever the propaganda may be, may use that as a tool to drive it against people or places or even things for that matter. So, but in this case, it was driven against the Jewish people. And the interesting thing about it is that it was all based upon a fictional piece, and then it was just added to and manipulated, and before you know it, you had this whole concept of the protocols of the elders of Zion. Now, I always say, if the Jewish people have run or continue to run this world conspiracy, then Bernie Sanders should have absolutely no problem getting into office as the United States president. Really shouldn't have a problem, should he? I mean, who was that guy? I can't even remember. 1 second here. Oh yeah, wasn't it Henry Kissinger? Not that I care for Henry Kissinger. I think he's Jewish, but he's still a big fucking asshole in my book. But under Gerald Ford, when Nixon was driven out of office, who was that? I believe Henry. I can't remember. Let me 1 second here. 1 second. There's a point to be made here. I want to make a point here. Something about Henry Kissinger. All right. This old guy, he's like 90. How old is this guy? How old is Henry? He's 92 years old. He'll probably live to he's 110. But, so he's Secretary of State. He was a United States National Security Advisor. I mean, why didn't he ever become president? And Henry Kissinger is I think, one of the most diabolical motherfuckers in the world. I mean, even though he's Jewish, I wouldn't trust him with my life. I mean, really. I mean, well, maybe. Maybe in an extreme case, like if we were in a foxhole in Israel fighting against the Palestinian Arabs, and I had Henry Kissinger to my left, and I had, I don't know, some Palestinian Arab to my right, who, let's say he's Palestinian Arab, but he's also Israeli. He's got Israeli citizenship. I would definitely trust Henry Kissinger over that guy. So in a case like that, I could trust Henry Kissinger with my life because he's Jewish. Outside of that, I wouldn't trust him on anything, especially with money. When it comes to money, I don't trust Henry Kissinger at all. And as far as doing things against America, I trust him even less. But there was someone, I can't remember who it was. Anyway, but the point is Bernie Sanders. I mean, if there's a Jewish conspiracy, a Jewish world conspiracy, Bernie Sanders should have absolutely no problem getting into office. I mean, he should, just like, and then you'll say, well, yeah, but, Hillary Clinton's like, way up in the polls, and maybe you'll say, if there's this Jewish world conspiracy, you'll be like, yeah, but that's a smoke and mirrors. They're really trying to play down Bernie Sanders, but eventually he's going to get into office, you watch. But the point is if there was this Jewish world conspiracy, Bernie Sanders would have absolutely no... Oh, that was the other person I was thinking of. Joseph Lieberman. He was vice president for Al Gore. Why didn't they get into office? If this was such a Jewish world conspiracy, why couldn't Joseph Lieberman get into office as the vice president of the United States? If there was such a Jewish world conspiracy, if the Jewish people control the entire world. And I'll tell you why. Why not? And that is because they don't control the whole wide world. Now, J.P. Morgan was not Jewish, and he became a billionaire, and he controlled a lot of the banking and a lot of Wall Street. And even to this day, they control a hell of a lot. In banking as well as in investments on Wall Street and all that stuff, real estate, you name it, they pretty much own it. And yet they're not Jewish. But if you have someone like Goldman Sachs, right, then all of a sudden, they own the whole world. So there's a lot of crazy shit. And I'm not saying that there are not Jewish powerful leaders in politics as well as in the economy. Like, for instance, like Henry Kissinger, I mean, I'm sure he makes one phone call. They do whatever he says as far as politics is concerned. And then I'm sure there's people within the economy or in the money circles that there are very, very extremely powerful Jewish people that control a good portion of the economies around the world. And I'm going to name one family. I spoke to the Wealthy Elite Families Part 2 in one of my videos. And that is like the poster boys of that Jewish wealthy elite is the Rothschilds. Now, they as a family whole, they own trillions of dollars around the world. Now, or the Rothschilds, do they have world control? Do they own the world? Absolutely not. I mean, they play a good portion. They play a good part in it, a pretty large part in it, but they don't own the fucking world themselves. The Rothschilds don't own the world. Anyone that thinks that, either you're suffering from delusion of grandeur, or you're paranoid schizophrenic, or you just have ideas of reference, or you just make up these things that have no basis in reality. And it fits probably an agenda. Most likely those that support like the protocols of the Elders of Zion are those that have an agenda against the Jewish people. That's usually what it is. There's usually a bias there. And so this is, when I think of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, I just think of it in terms of it's just one tool, it's just a tool or another tool to use against the Jewish people. I don't see it as the ultimate tool, but I see it as one tool against the Jewish people, to put them in their place, to fame them, to put them down, to make them look lowly, to make them look greedy, and all across the board. I'm Jewish, but I'm far from being greedy. I've never been greedy in my life. So there are other Jews like myself out there that are the same way. Even though I don't agree with Bernie Sanders' politics and all his bullshit, even though he has some money, but he's not like a multimillionaire like Michael Bloomberg. Like Michael Bloomberg is a billionaire. Or like Henry Kissinger. I don't know how much he's worth, but I'm sure he's worth, a few $100 million or maybe more. So, there are Jews that don't have a lot of money and don't have a lot of power, and then there are Jews that do, just like there are non-Jewish people that have a lot of power, and there are non-Jewish people that have very little power or very little wealth or money or being rich. So it crosses everyone. So to say that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is a representative of reality, and that is that there is a Jewish world conspiracy out there, is absolutely bullshit. And you'll say maybe to yourself, well, he's Jewish, no wonder why he said that. Well, no, if you understand the history of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, just like that guy talking on the Jerusalem Post, his banana bullshit, I mean, to even have an inkling without putting it in its historical context, you have fucking no idea what you're talking about. And so if you put it in the historical context as to where that Protocols of the Elders of Zion came from, then you understand that it's just a tool used by those that don't care for the Jewish people. Now, I'm open-minded enough to say that if you don't care for the Jewish people, that's your own opinion. I have no problem with that. What I do have a problem with is if you hit me over the head while you say you kike motherfucking Jaime bastard, you greedy Jesus-killing motherfucker. If you say that while you're hitting me over the head, I have sort of a problem with that. On the other hand, if you want to call me a kike, Jaime, greedy, low-down cockroach, Jewish fucking piece of shit asshole, well, you have a right to your opinion. I mean, I won't think very highly of you, but you have absolutely a right to that. I mean, for instance, like the KKK. If the KKK wants to hold a parade or something like that in some neighborhood or in some city block or whatever, under the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, they actually have a right to do that, as long as they don't incite violence or provoke violence or actually conduct themselves in violence. That is, they actually go into action and start beating people over the head. So, but you can pretty much say anything you like as long as you don't provoke violence or incite the violence. So, under the U.S. Constitution, I absolutely support the KKK and freedom of speech, just like in many other areas. You could be a USA Communist Party, a USA, I guess they have a USA Socialist Party, or whatever. If you want to believe in all that shit, which I disagree with, but if you do, knock yourselves out, as long as you're not inciting or provoking violence or actually going into that process of actually hitting somebody over the head. So even the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, people that still believe this shit and put it out there to bash the Jewish people, believe it or not, they have a right under the U.S. Constitution, if they're an American, to do whatever the fuck they want to say or print. They could reprint it or whatever. Of course, anyone that has any intelligence and understands the history of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion will realize that it's all bullshit. But a person under the U.S. Constitution, an American, has has a perfect right to print or even to edit the Protocols of the Elders of Zion to fit some kind of agenda, or even turn it into another novel and use the Protocols of the Elders of Zion within the context of the novel or whatever have you. And everyone has a perfect right to that. Not only that, they have a perfect right to their opinion. If they want to support the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, to believe that it's true, then they should be able to do that under the First Amendment and even the Fourth Amendment for your privacy. So as long as you don't incite or provoke violence or actually go through with it and hit somebody over the head. So, but I know as a fact, not just as a Jewish man or a Jewish person, but that I know as a fact that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is all bullshit, because I understand the historical record of it. I understand the where it started from and what it was used as under the Russians, and even to the day, it's used by the Palestinian Arab Muslims and all these other people to use it against the Jewish people. So as long as you understand the history of it, and you understand through intelligence and reasoning that the whole concept of a Jewish world conspiracy is utter bullshit, then you understand that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is utter bullshit. And I mean, there's nothing wrong reading it, as long as you don't actually believe that it's real. Now, you can if you like. That's your own thing. That's fine with me. But I just want to put it out there that if you do believe that the Protocols of the Elders of Zion is actually true, you're in either self-denial, you have an agenda, you're just bullshitting yourself, or you're just plain stupid. Or maybe a combination of all four, or maybe a few more things in there. So, yeah. So I just wanted to put my take out on the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. And you guys have a good one. Bye.